What's it like teaching entrepreneurship to 12-year-olds?
Well, they love it, and you tell them to create a business and give them some structure, and they will, and then you put a challenge like a competition. So we did Shark Tanks, and Jose was one of the judges, and he told the kids if he saw an idea that he liked and the business plan was good, he would give of his own money $5,000 to actually start the business. So these kids are like, what? This is like real life, man. So yeah, let's take it seriously. And they produced some great stuff, had a lot of fun. And I've done that for years at different schools.
You still do it?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
I just did it at my new school last year. And some of the products that you buy today came out of these kind of things, these Shark Tanks or invention fairs.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, it must be an interesting dynamic having these kids become entrepreneurs because they don't have all the baggage that you do as an adult. Like, they can just be creative and they don't have to be like, oh, I need a salary, I have to cover these bills.
Exactly.
They can be true, like, authentic entrepreneurs.
Just problem solvers, and they have to work with their group to create something. Usually it's just a prototype, but they love it because they're empowered to solve a problem.
Yeah, so what would you say is like your title, background, like little description on yourself?
For me, someone who never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to live in Japan, but to do that you had to teach. So I got a job in the States, taught for 4 years there, and met my wife-to-be, and then found out I love teaching because you can make a difference with kids.
What were you teaching originally?
Science and English.
Okay, and what does that transition to now?
Mostly I'm a science and math teacher until I became a principal and then a director of schools, and I started opening schools in Germany, and bilingual schools with people who wanted to do something different. So I realized my whole career was about being with people that were starting schools or adding on a piece of a school, and I like that energy, that the unknown, the creative spirit, optimistic, and that which then became entrepreneurial.
What are the fundamentals to starting a school?
You have to have the right group behind you. Usually they're the people with money, and then they have to have a sort of common vision, because I've started schools with people that didn't have a very good vision for it, and they didn't do well at the schools. But if you have a common vision and you like authentic, like you want to help young people and not just make money, then starting schools is pretty easy actually. And you get a team on board that is like-minded and wants to have a good time working instead of just teaching. They want to have a good time working together and doing something good for young people.
Have you heard of Cristo Rey?
Cristo
Rey, yeah.
No.
It's like my uncle's a donor for the school, but their model is essentially they were trying to figure out how to like fund the school.
Okay.
So what they did was it's a high school, and they have their kids a portion of the week go work jobs with like companies, large companies, and the companies make like, not grants, but commitments that will pay, will give X amount of jobs. And so they have like all these job structures that the schools created from working with other businesses, and then that funds their education.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's where schools will be going, I think.
You think so?
Yeah, and if they have the freedom to do that, schools are already moving in that direction. They're seeing colleges doing that. More and more colleges have entrepreneurship as a major. Northeastern University up in Boston, they started doing the same kind of thing where kids all had to spend a year working. That's definitely the trend.
What do you think is the like limitation of like the current schooling system in the States, for instance?
I haven't lived in the States for like 35 years. But I think it's the fear that people have of doing something that can't be tested, that you don't have test results to show you're good. Entrepreneurship is a really hard thing to measure whether kids are learning it, but math and science and English, those are easy things to test. So I think you have to have a whole change in what schools need to produce. What kind of kids. We need thinkers and problem solvers and global citizens. We don't need test takers.
How do you teach that like critical thinking and the problem solving?
Well, that's a good point, because you get some people do it like theory, but the kids don't learn by theory, they learn by doing something. So already, creating something, creating a business, even if it's not a business, you can get them to, like, instead of just learning the facts about World War II, you can get them to have a debate. Could World War II have been prevented? You know, and they're going to have a debate, so there's already motivation, right? There's a little competition between two sides or three groups, whatever, and they go and research it, and they have to produce their answer. But it means something to them.
Right.
Right?
What are the what do you think are like the best methodologies to like inspiring a kid to learn, right? Because I've found that this is something that I noticed when I was in school. There were, I went to a school that had half the town was very affluent, but half the town was very impoverished. Right. And so I would see kids in class all the time that were not the best students and were kind of rebellious, but there may be one class in our schedule that they excelled in.
Right.
And instead of the school supporting that student in that class that they excelled in, they were critiqued because they didn't do well in all these other classes.
Exactly. It's funny. There's a guy named Howard Gardner. He's a psychologist out of Harvard. And some years ago, he came up with this theory of multiple intelligences. And it struck a chord with every teacher who actually understood education. And basically, in a nutshell, what he said is all of us have maybe, at that time, 7 intelligences. I think now it's 8. And
what are they?
Well, there's some are like kinesthetic, some are interpersonal, intrapersonal, some are logical, some are more like athletic, spatial, and so the kids in school they're measured on 2 of these. Basically, if you're good in math, you're a good student, and if you're good at English or writing, you're a good student, right? Mm-hmm. If you're good in art or sports or talking, you might be told you have good talents in something, but it doesn't translate to being a top student, does it? That's not what we reward. So schools started realizing some of our top successful people in the world have dropped out of school, right? They're artists, they're entertainers, scientists. They drop out of school. Why? Because they're bored or they're just frustrated and they know they're good. Maybe they have dyslexia. And so, but schools don't know how to deal with that. So we started looking at that and saying, we've got to change the way we talk to kids and measure kids. And many schools are changing like that, and their teachers are looking at where are the intelligences of each student, and how do we do things that hit those intelligences.
How do you diagnose that?
Well, a lot of it is just getting to know kids, because teachers know kids, right? If you don't have 30 kids in a class, you know them by just talking to them and watching them work. And there are different tests and stuff you can give them, but you just see how kids are. They are the kids with high intelligence and artistry, and creativity. Some are really good talkers. Some are athletes, and find out how to connect that to what you're teaching them, whether it's math or science, whatever. I'm simplifying it, but it's so exciting when you have every kid in your classroom, whether it's 12-year-olds or 17-year-olds, whatever, really engaged in what you're doing, and they realize that their talents are being used for the good of the group. The kids love peer pressure, right? That's true. But if their talents are useful, whether it's speaking in front of they're going to be the speaker for the group, or the creator, they're going to create the poster for the group. All of a sudden, they're engaged and they care.
How do you, if you have a class of 20 students, how do you teach individually to each of them?
Well, you create challenges and projects that every kind of kid can do something about. Whether it's debates or role plays or creating a movie or something like that. That appeals to every kid, and they can do up to their level. The other thing is, what is success? So you tell them, okay, what is success? So what does it mean for you to be successful? A kid says, well, if I get a B in this, I'm successful. I said, great, that's your goal. Just do what you need to get a B, and that's success. Other kids say, well, I need to get an A. Okay, that's fine, that's your goal. So you start talking about what is success to these kids too. Not every kid needs to get an A to be successful in each project. It's all kind of, artificial stuff that we're doing in schools.
So having them define those success metrics, and it's going to be different for each of them, but helping them to get to that goal, whatever it is.
Yeah, and recognize the kids, hey, you're amazing at art, and you're this creativity, but you don't call it just a talent. You said that's your intelligence in art, or your intelligence in interpersonal skills, and that's a really high intelligence. And so they think of themselves differently. And so many young people, they're frustrated because they work hard and they get a C, you know? These are usually kids of some kind of maybe a learning challenge like dyslexia, or they're just, they're boys that love to do sports and they don't want to mess around with, you know, some of the boring stuff. And you get them to rethink who they are and what makes them successful in the classroom, and teachers see them to be successful. All of a sudden the kids want to come to school, you know? And you help parents too to understand this. Stop criticizing your kids so much. They have this amazing talent. Foster that, you know? And all of a sudden the kids want to do more. Or like with Charlie, you help him say, hey, that path is just as good as this other path, you know? Praise the kid that takes the path less taken also.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about before we got on the podcast, how like those early experiences really define our adulthood. And when you're just getting an F on your, like that becomes your reality, that you're a failure, even though you might be successful in something else or might have an interest in this other discipline that's not recognized in that, you know, typical school system. Now you have this reality that you're a failure that can't like participate in society. And I've seen that with a lot of kids that went to school with me, what they've become now, although they absolutely had potential in something, they were led to believe that they were, you know, invaluable.
I agree. And the really bright ones, they get so frustrated because they know they're smart, you know, but they get these low grades, so they just pretend they don't care. And that's the worst thing. Kids pretend they don't care, they don't do their work, frustrate their parents, but they have a ton of potential. Those kids go on to be super successful in life, but they're somehow not successful in school. Well, that's a problem with schools. That's not a problem with life, you know?
Right.
And so we have to, you know, look backwards and say, how do we change our school systems? Private schools can do that quickly. Public schools, it's much harder because it's all state mandated, and whether it's in Germany or Panama or US, they have a certain curriculum they have to get through. But in private schools, you're allowed to be creative, and you encourage that kid to be different. And here's the other thing, a lot of teachers are very traditionally, they're traditional thinkers, that's why they go into education, and they're not comfortable with the nonconformists. And so part of like my job as a principal is to help teachers become comfortable with the nonconformist kid. Embrace that kid, find a way to challenge him, you know?
So how do you break those belief systems with an adult that they've already been ingrained in?
Well, you start talking about things like Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, and you have other teachers share their successes with that same group of kids. And so every week in our staff meetings, I'll point out a teacher that did something really cool, a really cool project, and how that boy that typically, or that girl that typically wasn't engaged, all of a sudden came to life. And so teachers can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, I can take a chance.
So this isn't the first school that you've developed.
No.
Is this one in Panama?
No, this is the second one in Panama, and I did about 6 different schools in Germany before coming here.
So walk me through that. Like, what does that look like, starting like a school?
Well, I didn't have any plan to do it. I just wanted to live in Berlin, and where my wife's from Germany, and this group said, hey, let's start a bilingual school using really creative curriculum. And so I did that, and after that, some other parents said, hey, will you help us start a school? And you get a reputation as someone that can start a school, you know? And that means working with the government and understanding how to hire teachers and stuff like that. And it just becomes really, really fun, but it's really draining too, right?
Why is it draining?
Well, you work until 8 or 9 at night every night, and because that's when typically parents who want to start schools are free, after their regular job. And so after 5 years doing that in Berlin, I realized I hadn't seen my family very much. My daughter graduated, my oldest, and I realized I didn't know her hardly because I spent so much time away. So I quit that, and I went back to teaching for a year, and at the school where my kids went in Berlin. And then, and so I still want to work with teams starting schools, but not so much. And then I came to Panama to have my 2 younger daughters learn Spanish and start the Metropolitan School. Fell in love with Panama, and it's part of the who knows what's going to happen, of being someone who likes to be part of a creative process, And I have confidence through my parents and through my experiences to take a chance on myself. And my wife is amazing, supportive.
What do you like about Panama?
Pretty much everything. I like the climate, the entrepreneurial spirit, the jungle, the mystery, the history. everything.
How do you define it as a destination? Like if you had to summarize Panama?
Like for tourists or for living?
For living, I think. We're obviously doing a lot of stuff with the Dream Spear program and, bringing people down and exposing them to a new destination and an alternative way of living. But it's a big jump for a lot of people. People think that Panama is like some narco heaven, in Panama.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect when I came here. That was kind of my impression, probably unsafe. First of all, it's incredibly safe. And even having daughters here, I felt very safe. Downtown, we didn't live in a gated community. Very safe place. You're watching, the country develop right in front of you. And if you're in education or business, you're part of that development. How many countries are like that? It is, around every corner is a piece of history and a bit of mystery. Why does this happen? The indigenous tribes here, the whole Henry Morgan thing, my wife and I looked for a 350-year-old pirate treasure up in the northern part of the country, if we want to just do something fun. Not like a super, crazy thing, but just once in a while,
Yeah.
You can do so many cool things here, and it's never boring. So anybody that's a little bit adventurous, loves nature, loves to be with just interesting people, I don't think there's a better country. Yeah.
So now that you're building this school here, and how long have you guys been doing it for?
9 years at my first school and 2.5 years at this one.
So it's probably very similar to building a company, and you're essentially building a company, but the reason I ask is because as the principal, you have to it's almost like being a CEO. You're perpetuating this culture.
Yeah.
And how do you attract the people with aligned values that are going to push forward this vision and this outcome that you want?
That's a great question. And I found that the best teachers want the challenge. They love coming in to be part of the creation of something. And so they might not be thrilled about the salary benefits packages that Panama offers compared to maybe Southeast Asia, where you're going to be headed to, right? You'll see it's a whole different ballgame there. But they like the challenge of being part of a creative team and doing something very special, which is sort of their legacy a little bit. They don't want to just do the boring same old, same old. They're entrepreneurial thinkers, they're nonconformists. That's why they left their countries and went overseas.
So how do you find those people? Because I've dealt with that with my own company you're trying to find people that are going to build the company, but there's a lot of people out there that just want to be employees.
It's two ways. Some just kind of by chance, a friend, word of mouth. I've hired people here in Panama that were Peace Corps workers here, and then to get in, an engineer who plays in a band called Shorty and Slim. He became a science teacher for me. A great guy in his 40s. He wanted to do something different, and he never taught before, but he had all that stuff inside. And as I say that so many people, I can teach you how to teach, but I can't teach you how to care about kids. And I can't teach you how to be interesting, as a person. And if I see those two qualities, that caring and that kind of interesting person, I try to get them on board. And after 6 months, they're great teachers.
So if you can teach someone how to teach, that's a very important skill that I would like to, learn more on how to master as an entrepreneur.
Well, happy to work with you on that. And a lot of the teaching happens with my teachers teaching each other, right? You pair them up with someone who's sort of a master teacher, a good teacher, and they teach each other. So it's really much a, camaraderie of us working together to create a cool product for the kids.
If you were to say these are the keys to having influence over someone so they learn, what would they be?
Ooh, keys, young and old?
Yeah.
It's
different?
No,
between ages?
probably not. You have to look into their, sounds funny, look into their soul. What's making them tick? What motivates them? What do they like to do? And talk to them, make it a conversation about how to get better, and give them a lot of praise and celebrate their successes so that they're not worried about making mistakes, whether it's a kid or, I have 4 kids. We try to do that, celebrate every day something they did that was good. And that's what they focus on. And if people start focusing on what they're doing right, giving themselves a little pat on the back, once a day, they'll start becoming more confident and enjoying everything.
So focusing more on the positive.
On the positive, totally. And that's a cliche, but like I tell my kids, it's 1 minute manager thing where every day you ask yourself, did I do one thing to help achieve one of my main goals? One thing. And if I did, pat yourself on the back. And if you didn't, give yourself a little kick in the rear and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do it. That mentality helps them change and helps them stay focused on what counts in life, right? Which is positive.
Right.
It's successes. That's the entrepreneur, right? The growth mindset, the not being afraid of failure. And kids these days, young kids are getting so sucked into anxiety that, oh, I know someone's not going to like me. I'm not going to have enough likes. I don't know how to, be the funniest person in the room and stuff. But that's not what it's all about. It's just accepting yourself who you are, right? You've got all kinds of talents. I can tell right now. I could tell you 3 things that you could probably do in addition to what you're doing, based on how you interact with me, and also the cameraman here. There's a certain.
There's 3 things that I can do additionally to get better at.
No, 3 totally different careers you could be good at.
Oh.
You would be a great teacher.
Thank you.
You'd be a great teacher, and a great coach. We probably are, and because of you have an authentic interest in people. You're not just doing this for the podcast or the camera. You actually like doing this, and you're good at it, right? You're listening to me, and you actually care what's being said, and you have a vision. This might help somebody out there, right? Might be one person that listens to this thing and says, "Oh, that was kind of inspiring."
And to give you a little background on the podcast, I learned a lot through being the entrepreneurial journey, and I felt like it gave me a lot of freedom. Right. It was I had a lot of aha moments, and I would try to give that information to people that I'm friends with or people that I care about. Yep. But a lot of times I would realize that I wasn't having the result that I wanted. It was coming off as patronizing.
Exactly.
And so the point of the podcast was hopefully if I compile the stories of other people who are taking the road less traveled, that would be a good case study or example than me just telling those people that I care about. But that's something that I'm very curious about is how do you catalyze, because it comes down to a decision, right? Mm-hmm. The person has to make the decision themselves. Yeah. And all you can do is maybe catalyze that decision or put something into their awareness that makes that change take place. But
well, that's it. You got to give them that belief they can do it. And sometimes it takes one person, who's sort of successful to say, I believe in you, you can do it. But then they have to have a support network that helps them along that process. That's where this Dream Spear project comes in, right? We can help these people to see if it's right for them. And then if it is, then here are the steps to take to be a better entrepreneur or teacher or leader or parent. And so those 2 things, but someone has to say, you got what it takes.
Right.
And I think every one of us probably had that at some point, all right?
Yeah, you're right.
Right? And my first principal, who was actually, I was 21, and didn't want to be a teacher, I live in Japan. And he actually was my 6th grade teacher, and I went in to be a middle school teacher because of him, because he made an impact on me as a 12-year-old, because he was doing cool stuff in the classroom back in his 80s. Or 70s. And he said, you're a good teacher. We got what it takes. And you should keep developing that and don't just do it for living in Japan. One guy kind of changed how I thought about myself, and here I am all these years later. So I'd like to try to be that guy, sometimes now that I've done this, and say to a young teacher or even an older teacher, you're really good, keep going, and maybe you'll be a leader as well, go into administration. So.
What about for a parent? What do you see what are parents doing incorrectly that they should be doing? And I know it's it's not black and white like that, no. and they don't make a manual for it.
No, I'm lucky because most of my parents in my schools I've been in are really good parents, right? They get it, they're real supportive, they're paying extra for their kids to go to school, they're super supportive, and they listen to advice. I think maybe parents who don't listen to advice are making a mistake and don't get feedback, I don't want to judge any parents because I obviously don't know their stories. But I think the key to good schools is that parents in schools have this open door to each other. We really do care and we talk to each other honestly. And if the parents listen, they're going to be successful because you got a group of adults working with your kids, and they see your kids more than you do once in the schools. And then you got the parents over here nervous that the teachers are judging them, right? And the teachers are worried that the parents are judging them, and everyone's sort of fearful of each other, and they put up walls. But as soon as you break that down, and like I have staff parent bands where we jam together once in a while, you know.
You're a musician?
Not really, but I like to play harmonica. But it doesn't matter. I just like to bring people together, and I have fun with it. And the parents can come, and then you just relax, and you let down your worries and your walls, and you can start working together. And then kids see that, right? And they can't play the parent off the school, off the teacher. And the kids start getting better because they can also be honest with themselves. So everyone's honest, everyone's trying to help each other. We're in the same sync, same wavelength, and it's incredible. It's so much fun to teach and work in these schools.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I've seen like, and again, it's probably not this black and white, but I've noticed like the parents that are very critical of their children, a lot of times that leads to a child that is like never satisfied, which can sometimes lead to like a high achiever, someone who succeeds a lot because they had that criticism. Totally. But then the alternative is like, you know, they're on that hamster wheel always. That's kind of more my profile. Versus there's someone that their parents were always like more coddling them, which a lot of times they don't become high achievers, but they're very content with themselves.
Very content.
You know, which is another good thing, but it's hard to say what is that proper balance.
I think you're right. The two extremes aren't going to be good for a kid. You know, definitely somewhere in the middle. And again, reading something and listening to people that, you know, how to work with your kids. And like I was talking to a prospective family today and said, you know, they're struggling because their kid isn't achieving as much as they think he can. I said, well, make a business. He's an entrepreneur, this kid. He's already 12 years old. So make a business plan with him. Give him something to work for that he cares about, like a Game Boy or whatever, you know, something, or time with the dad. And he makes a business plan, what he has to do to get it. You know, he'll like that. Yeah. But you don't have to constantly badger him, right? And he doesn't have to hear the criticism how he's underachieving, because kids that age know the game. They know it's not that important what they do in middle school. But make it a game somehow, you know, make it a challenge, make it real life. Then they almost always succeed, you know. What's the most difficult challenge that you've encountered through this journey as a teacher, or biggest horror story? The horror story. I think there. You don't have to be political about it either. No, but I think there are people that get into education for the wrong reasons. I think there are people that get in leadership of schools for the wrong reasons. Okay. And so they're often not as secure as they should be. And so being challenged instead of encouraging could lead to, you know, less productive working environments, whether it's in the classroom or working with your team of teachers. So trying to make sure that teachers are given that good feedback, like, hey, you got to, you know, be more secure and just, you know, listen to each other. You know, it's not competition. Right. So what are those bad motivations that you've seen? I think it's just that I have to be the best, you know, and I'm not insecure enough, so I'm going to criticize the students or the teachers, whatever. Is that common? Not really. No? No, not in my experience, very uncommon. But you see it once in a while, and it sort of spoils that whole atmosphere of, hey, we're all in this together, you know? Yeah. So we'll kind of celebrate each other and have some fun together and go out and then play some music together. Because at the end of the day, you know, when I look back on my career of, I think, 10 schools in Europe and US and here, I remember those things, those social events that we did, those bondings with teachers from around the world, and us playing sports or music. That's what I remember. Yeah. You know, and that's what I want to create, like, for my teachers, to have those moments. So. Yeah, I mean, if that's the worst experience you've had in, you know, all these years, then you're doing it pretty well. It's probably because you're very authentic and genuine, and you attract those types of people. Well, maybe I like that. Thank you. That's a nice compliment. I think there's something to that. You know, people are attracted to similar-minded people. So if you want some kind of a dictator boss, you won't come to me. You know, but if you want someone that's encouraging you, and like my first director overseas said, Rick, I hire great teachers and I try to get out of their way. You know, simple but great philosophy. It's like Steve Jobs' philosophy. Is that right? Yeah, he's like, hire the
best people in the world and let them do their jobs and get out of the way.
Yeah, but tell them that. I tell them all the time, look, you're the best teacher I've seen in years. You're great at this. Just do it. Go for it. I trust you. And if you make a mistake, I'll still be behind you. You know, it's okay. That's the kind of leader I had as a teacher. And so I tried to be that kind of leader, you know, in my last 20 years.
Do you think giving people, have you seen it backfire, giving people that kind of slack?
Never.
Never.
No, well, you know which teachers shouldn't have that much slack also, right? You know, you can kind of read the room and say, okay, this person's ready for full, you know, freedom. Others need it incrementally. So.
What do you find through this journey in like teaching entrepreneurship? What have you seen has been the environment that leads to someone later in life? Because you've been doing this long enough that you've gotten to see those transitions or those transformation from student to adult. What are what is the environment, what is the makeup that leads to that outcome that you guys are desiring? And what is that outcome that you guys are desiring?
Yeah, I think what I try to tell all of my teachers and the parents and the kids is, you know, you don't know what's coming out there in college and afterwards. So what's important, what's going to help you, and we'll try to help you with those skills. So there's survival skills, like literally making fires, you know, using sticks and stuff. And
no way, you guys are teaching that?
yeah, and
wow.
Because you know what kids are missing a lot is the trust in themselves. You know, like when I was growing up in Kentucky, I was climbing trees, and if I had slipped, I could have died, right? Because we were climbing high trees. That's what you did, or playing in the creek with, you know, animals that were dangerous, and snakes and stuff. But I knew to trust myself. But kids today, we're not giving them enough chances to do things where they can really fail, like really fail, both in physically and mentally. Always protecting them. So on my field trips and in classrooms, I give them chances where they can fail. But I give them skills where they won't, right? And support where they won't. But if they do, you know, they're not going to die. But you know, and so you really ignore all the instructions when we're rappelling off a mountain or something like that. But kids don't do that. They're never going to do that as long as you're watching them. So I want them to feel confident, both in their abilities as they are, and not try to always compare themselves to somebody else, right? So that's where that multiple intelligence stuff comes in. So give them that, and also this growth mindset of take chances and don't worry about failing, you know? And then finally, you know, what little skills like that 1 minute manager, like how to do something different, like giving yourself a pat on the back, which kids don't do. You know, the number one thing we're great at as humans, the number one thing is being critical of ourselves. The number one thing, right? Oh, I don't like my hair. I don't like my shirt. I don't like my life, whatever it is. Kids, adults. And if you start every day saying, okay, I'm gonna think about something I did right, and that's all you focus on, then you'll start feeling better.
Yeah, it's like a complete paradigm shift.
It's complete, but it's easy and it's real. It's not like, oh, there's some wacky guy telling me I have to, you know, do yoga or something to feel good. It's like, this is successful people in all fields, whether it's athletics or business, doesn't matter, or religious. That's what they do, you know? And we can do it too. And we all should be doing it. And the kids buy into it for the most part.
But it's a discipline, right? It's like, you
Yes.
know, it takes work,
It takes
and it's
a lot
a
of work.
habit.
Yes.
You know, it's like making your bed in the morning.
Yes.
Like you have to have that positivity and you have to have control over that mindset and those belief systems. Otherwise, you are going to be a product of the external.
Yeah, exactly, you're right. And so hopefully a school environment, kids maybe stay in international school for maybe 3 years on average, they're gonna hear that from all their teachers. So everyone is sort of saying the same message in their own way.
Right.
And the kids start believing it, and then they start seeing success. Get into a good college, and you know they see that they're more ready, they're more prepared for success than their peers. So,
Do you think college is imperative to being successful?
no way.
No?
No way, no. Neither is teacher training or teacher certification. A lot of my best teachers had no teacher training and no certification. I didn't. When I started, I had no teacher training or certification. I was just a naturally good teacher, as it turned out, and I had good mentors. But also, I think more and more businesses are seeing there's a lot of wasted time in colleges, and they're not really producing anything of great value to what's happening afterwards in the business, field.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I'll probably get in trouble with a lot of my parents.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if the kids are going to do something, what's your goal? And for most kids, the goal is getting a college education, or a college education will help them. Maybe it's just networking, the networking that you do in college, that could be worth it. But do they need 4 years and $400,000 for that? I don't think so.
What would be a better alternative, do you think, to college?
Well, like the German system it's really interesting. Only 25% of those kids go to university, of all the graduates. The other, like 50% go to more like managerial trade schools, like for sales and things like that. And then 25% go to more like with labor, like maybe be a mechanic or something. And everyone is proud about that career choice they made, because it's getting them ready for the job they want to do.
Yeah.
Right? And we have like 90% of our graduates of high school are expected to go to college or something like that in America. And they don't know what they want to do. They're not really learning a trade. And now colleges are even taking 2 years before kids can learn or decide on a major, right? So there are probably 25% of American kids that really know what they want to do and need that college education. They're going to get everything out of it. And 50% not sure. And 25% need more like a trade school.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that the biggest problem for me is how quickly after high school you go into college and you assume all that debt. And it's like, I'm well out of college now, on the tail end of exiting a business, and I still feel like I don't know what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
So luckily I went to a pretty cheap, and it was probably the first mature decision that I ever made in my life was going to Mass Maritime.
Yeah.
And, as opposed to going to one of these big, like my alternative was SMU, and taking on all this college debt. And I've already paid off my college, which is like a huge burden off my back. But I can't imagine, and the reality is that so many kids are going into these colleges, assuming all of this debt and leaving it with a skill set, if they even got a skill set, that's not even aligned with the rest of their life.
No, absolutely agree. And,
it's irresponsible to recommend that, I think.
I think so. When my second daughter went to a college in the States and didn't feel like that was right for her, she took a year off and did like her gap year, her second year, which was great. Then she went to Amsterdam and worked on communication. She wasn't sure what she wanted to do, but it was the right environment for her, like the people and stuff and the teachers that helped her. And then she got her master's degree. So 30 years old, she's found what she wants to do. And that's how long it took her. And I think I 100% approve of that journey. She's done a lot along the way, the music and stuff. She's a great boy. But if she'd gone to, the U.S. college and taken on the loan, she would never have been able to do what she really should be doing. So I don't know. Two of my kids went to graduated from U.S. colleges, so I really value that as well. But it was right for them.
You've obviously taken an interest in DreamSpear. What do you see as like where the needle is moving in education? Like, what is the future for education, and where do you think it'll be successful?
More and more schools realize that the kids in high school today, they'll be doing jobs in 5 years that don't exist, right? That don't even exist. So what are we preparing them for? And that's more and more the entrepreneurial set of skills. So DreamSpear is giving both high school kids this experience, but also college age and afterwards, the chance to see if they have the entrepreneurial mindset and skill set at all. I guess first mindset, right? And if you have that, you can develop the skill set. But if you're a selfish person, or you're, if things are never going to let you work together as a group, then you shouldn't be trying to be an entrepreneur. You're going to fail.
Right.
But there's nowhere in life that teaches them that, or gives them a chance to test that, Like if they want to be an athlete, they have all these sports they can play through high school. Artists, same thing. Mathematicians, same thing. Scientists, same thing. But nothing like evaluates them for being an entrepreneur, right? That I know.
Yeah.
I mean, colleges are finally starting to do this as a major, but by then the kids are 18, 19, 20. So this DreamSpear is giving young people, middle-aged people, everybody a chance to assess themselves first, and then train.
And you realize, like, that's where Jose and I have found a lot of common ground, is that we see in the business world all the time, the people that come out of these Ivy League schools that have MBAs that have way more advanced like business fundamentals
Yep.
than I do,
Right.
but they don't have the mindset and the confidence. And I feel like we run circles around those people
Yeah.
because it really comes down in the game of entrepreneurship. You deal with so much adversity and so much unknown that if you don't have that confidence and that security in yourself,
Yeah.
you'll never make it.
No, I agree, totally. And that's the story you guys have been telling, and I want to be part of. I think people run scared a lot, right? A lot of fear, fear of earning enough money, fear of the title, fear of people criticizing you. But the entrepreneur doesn't have that fear, right? Or we'll learn.
Not as much of it.
Not as much, right? Well, you'll be surrounded by people that are supporting you, saying, "Hey, good for you. Keep trying. Yeah, you failed 3 times. Keep trying." I mean, all the stories you hear in the school about, the Abe Lincolns who failed so many times until he became president. It's easy to say, but as a kid, you don't get the chance to try that out, except in sports and arts and math and science, right?
Right.
So let kids have a chance at entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Young people, train them, evaluate them, support them, and we'll have this incredible movement, I think, that's going to spread throughout the world. It's already is starting, right? As 16, 17, 18-year-olds are becoming, multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And now with AI, that's going to put a lot of, older people, out of work because they can't keep up. So those guys have to find a way to get trained in DreamSpear or other products like that could help.
And I think what I see with a lot of these like entrepreneurship courses that I see online is the program is defining that metric for success.
Exactly.
And I think what we want to do is we want to help people to define success for themselves and then create a system to hold them accountable to their own goals.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
And I think that's where DreamSpear differs from a lot of other programs.
It's great. One of the best basketball coaches in college is a guy, UCLA coach, John Wooden, and he would talk about success, and he defined it totally differently. He said, just being the best that you can be. You define success. And that transferred into success in life as a dad, as a player, as a student. And that's what we're doing with this DreamSpear product, I think, this project that helping people define success and figure out their own goals and what they need to do to get there. And we have the support system, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's missing. I don't know anywhere in the world where that exists.
How do you define success for yourself?
That's an unfair question. But it really is to say, look, I try to be my best at what I've been given, and try to be authentic and positive and treating everybody fairly and with respect. And if I do that, I feel good about myself and things will happen that I want to happen.
If you look back at all the experiences that you've had in life and you have to say, if there's one piece of advice that I could pass down to my kids or to my students that has been, instrumental in my own success or my own quality of life, what would be that piece of information?
Boy, it's again kind of cliche with the entrepreneur, but just believe in yourself, take risks, don't see failure as something you fear, and be respectful.
It's great advice.
That's it.
If our audience is interested in learning more from you, or maybe reaching out, or there's someone that might want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, I don't have really an Instagram presence or anything.
Is there LinkedIn or anything?
I have LinkedIn, yeah, a LinkedIn account.
Okay, sweet. Well, we'll tag that underneath the
All right.
video so people can hit you up and maybe your email or something.
That sounds great. I would love to communicate with people and maybe you're going through a time when they're not sure which path to take. And I do that a lot with teachers and kids and parents. I'm happy to help them out.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been very interesting.
Oh, good. It's a pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.
For sure.
All right.
How long have you been living in the sailboat for?
We moved on in 2017. So, and at that point, our kids were like 10, 11, 13, 14. And we have a daughter who's 17 at the time who decided she did not want to live on a sailboat with her 4 brothers. She was like, no. And so she stayed with grandparents until she was old enough to fly the nest.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's that transition like? Obviously, there's a lot of people that talk about doing something like that, living in a van or living on a sailboat, but
Yeah, getting more popular by the day, especially with YouTube channels popping
yeah.
up with families like, we don't know how to sail and we just bought a huge boat. And yeah, so the popularity is huge. It was a rough transition in some ways. Like, you know, it was, you have to budget everything, right? Your power, your water, your drinking water, your diesel, you know, for fuel and whatnot. That's all kind of interrelated. You know, you've got solar power helps boost the power, or you could run the engine for that. But getting to the point with the kids knowing that you don't have unlimited water. You can't just flip on a tap or turn on the lights and just, it's going to be there indefinitely. And that was a rough transition for them coming from suburbia to living now on a boat where you're confined, you're with your family 24/7 in a small space, and you expect that power is going to work when you turn it on, water's going to be there when you turn on the tap, and that was the roughest transition, I think. But when we went back to land from being on the boat, it was the opposite. All of a sudden they're taking quick showers, they're doing dishes, but they'll turn on the water and then do some dish and then turn it off real quick, and aware of lights when they leave a room, turning off the lights. So it kind of worked both ways. So their land living after the boat was much more, I think, aware and responsible. So it's kind of cool.
Was that a tough transition for you, or you'd already done something like that in the past?
I had never done. My parents kind of threatened that they were going to do it when I was about 5th grade. They're like, we're going to sell the house and move on to a boat. And I was like, what? And I thought it was crazy. And and then I kind of got down with the idea, like, okay, see the world. Okay, that sounds kind of cool. And it didn't end up happening. So my wife and I ended up with a 25-foot little day sailboat in San Francisco Bay. And we'd take the kids down and go sailing for the weekend and use it, or just the two of us, we'd go down and use it as like a little hotel room, right, with a San Francisco skyline right there and everything. And that was cool. And we did that for a while, and then we started kind of dreaming, like, what would it be like if, when the kids are all grown and gone, you know, off to what they're going to do, that you and I, we just go sail the world. That'd be cool, right? And so we kind of dreamed about that for a while, and all these countries we're going to see, and the cultures and the food and the music and all this stuff. And then we were like, yeah, but kind of a bummer that the kids won't see that. They won't get to experience all these different places. And that's when we started kind of the crazy thought of like, what if we take the kids with us? You know, this is a good idea. And like I said, after a little while, we thought about it for a while, and then we just pulled the trigger because we like travel and we're fairly spontaneous. And we thought, well, can we make it work? Basically homeschooling the kids on board to ripping them out of their suburban lifestyle. And we kind of wanted to anyway, because we weren't really thrilled with some of the things they're picking up. I mean, nothing wrong with American suburbia, but you know, what they're picking up in school, some of the things, we're like, you know, it'd be really nice to get them out of that so they can see something else. So a lot of the world lives differently. And if we could make that work somehow, even if it's for a year, 2 years, let's give it a shot.
Like what did you not like them seeing in schools?
Well, there's a lot of violence. There's bullying. You know, our daughter got picked on a little bit in high school when she was there, and just the drugs and alcohol and, you know, the standard stuff. It was feeling like a loss of innocence at a younger age. You know, generation by generation, just feels like it's progressively been getting younger and younger. How they kind of become less innocent, more exposed to adult things at a really young age now. And so we're like, and just the fact that they were so insulated, you know, and again, nothing wrong, I love America, and the great thing is it's still there, right? Like people say, well, what if it doesn't work on the boat? You know, what if the kids hate it, or you guys don't like it, or it just doesn't work? And I'm like, suburbia is not going anywhere. It will be there when we want to come back. And sure enough, when we ended up back on land, you know, it was great. It's convenient. You know, there's a lot of things about it that are way easier than living on a boat. But yeah.
What was life like growing up for you? That obviously it takes a certain type of person to be able to have the confidence to make a decision like that and leave those societal norms. I'm a lot like that, but it's definitely the path less traveled.
Right.
So I'm curious what it was like for you to, what that environment was like that gave you that confidence to do something like that.
Right. Yeah, my dad especially was an adventurer. And now I grew up super shy. I had an accent that cut off the top of my upper lip when I was a kid, and that really led to years and years of really intense shyness. So I was like bound to be extremely introverted. But my dad would get me into things that were outside the norm, right? He started sailing with me on the San Francisco Bay. I didn't know any kids that were sailing at the time, and that gave me some degree of confidence and the adventure of being out there and being like, we could theoretically die or at least, get hurt or capsize or something. And there's something about that intensity and the freedom of the sailing, right? That we can choose anywhere you want. We can go to San Francisco, we can go to Oakland, we can just sail around. And there was something about that freedom that really intrigued me. By high school, even though I was going to high school in kind of a suburban town, we had moved across the Santa Cruz Mountains to the coast, and we were living on a ranch out there. And so now he's teaching me things that he grew up with, which was horseback riding and fixing barbed wire fences and all these other things that, again, I had no one in my high school that was doing that. It was completely different and a huge confidence boost. And again, something I could go back after school and saddle up a horse and just go riding off into wherever. And that fit with me really well. It's like all of a sudden I've got these things that I had in me that gave me a lot of confidence. And like I said, he was kind of a Renaissance man, everything from lumberjack to a poet and adventurer. And that kind of just spurred these ideas. Like when my wife and I were talking, it was like, why don't we just do it? Like, what's to stop us? How bad could it be? If we fail at it, so to speak, we can always come back because land life, we know.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like before I came to Panama, I was creating all these limitations in my head why I had to wait to move to Panama. And then when I really made the decision internally that I was going to move here, it took me like less than a month to get all the pieces in place.
Oh, right on.
And I'm like, why did I wait 3 years to do this?
Right.
It's pretty crazy. But so you said before, like when your kids came on and they had this experience, they're shutting off the water, they're being more conscious of the lights. But have you noticed any other like impacts that it's happen on their like temperament or their mood or how they deal with adversity, like different situations from that experience?
Yeah, for sure. Several things. Number one, things like video games almost shut off completely really quickly. We had an Xbox on board, but they really only played when we'd stay in a marina and had that kind of power source. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of influence was much, much less. A lot of their normal influences as a teenager, social media was much, much, much less. So now it went from being their friends as primary influence or social media to their parents, which was a weird transition, I think, for all of us a little bit. But all of a sudden we started noticing they had an ability to talk to adults once we started sailing, called cruising. Once we started living on the boat and traveling around, we would meet other cruisers and we'd meet people doing the same thing of all ages, families, older people, retirees, young couples, that kind of stuff. And for our kids, we always raised them to be polite around adults, but, normal sort of American society compartmentalizes the age groups, right? Oh, there's got some kids, go play with the kids, or, the adults are going to talk over here. It's kind of, we naturally group out age-wise. But when you're on a sailboat, this is all you have. Like you've met these people in a port somewhere in Anchorage, and like for instance, our kids' first sailing friends were these two guys in their 70s who were old Army buddies, and they were traveling south from Virginia towards North Carolina, and we were traveling the same direction. So we spent a few days together, and they taught our kids magic tricks, and we ate dinners together, and the kids just would have full-on conversations. And later, when we asked them, so who are your first sailing friends? Like friends. They said, Howard and Terry. these two guys in their early 70s. And I was like, that's different. That's a huge change that they went through. And it's only increased since then that they've got this ability, doesn't matter how old the person is, they cross all boundaries and they just have like normal conversation. And I think to a lot of degree, it's just been interesting to see them open up that way. Is a really interesting young man. And yeah.
What about moving to a different country, not only for them, but for you guys? How does that cultural experience and cultural immersion develop you as a person, and why is it important?
I thought it was huge. As you know, coming to Panama, there's a lot of things that are the same. You know, it's you're not talking about a third world country here. It's developed, and
although a lot of people think it is.
They think it's third world, or now they don't even know where it is. A lot of our kids' friends had no idea where Panama was, which blew me away because it was drilled into us as kids, like Panama Canal. And I think in some ways there was a certain fear from a lot of people about coming to Central America with our family, that they were like, oh, is that even safe? Are you going to be okay? And I'm like, after being down here for a minute, we're like, this is more safe than half the cities in America. You have to know, like any city in America, you have to know where to go and where not to go.
Right.
But we have found it to be extremely safe, and the people generous and kind, and but a shift in thinking. And I was the only one who knew Spanish coming in, and so for them that was a steep learning curve of learning survival Spanish, and just the cultural differences. Things that you would expect in the States to be a certain way, just are different. Not better, not worse, just different. And but that, I think it's been really eye-opening for all of us. Like where I'm like totally confident living and working here now, and having teenagers and now young teenage and young 20s, and they don't necessarily want to go back. They love it. They're open to, one of them's talking about sailing with some people across to the South Pacific. And so they're open to movement, which makes sense based on the way we raised them. But they're not in a hurry to go back to the States yet. They think, yeah, probably at some point, but.
What are you doing now while you're in Panama? I know you already told me off the podcast, but.
Yeah, so we ended up, my wife and I both got jobs at school here in town. Casco School, and right now I'm teaching English and media studies in the middle school, high school level. Next year I'll be doing history, kind of humanities approach, and she's working with kindergartners. And so we've kind of landed on land, so to speak, for a minute, and we're not really sure how long. We love it here, and so we think at least for several years we'll use it as a home base, even when we get the boat back in the water and running, and we'll use the boat to take vacation out to the islands or up to Costa Rica or something, but stick around for a while and kind of see what happens next.
And you were telling me about this property that you guys have got.
Yeah. So when we needed to take our boat out of the water and get some repairs done, kind of near where the marina is, we needed a place to rent. So we'd have, as the boat got repaired, we'd have a place to stay. And so we ended up in this place in San Carlos, and they offered us either the main house for a certain amount of money each month, or the entire property, which includes 5 little rooms essentially, that we could then use to sublet out. So we went for the whole property option, and so right now we have the main house down there, and that's where the family stays, and then we have 5 little casitas that we Airbnb out. And the boys, our sons down there, they run it during the week completely. And then we have an apartment here in the city, so we can do the teaching here in the city. On weekends, we hop on a bus, head back to the beach house, and hang out with family and run the property there.
Do they stay pretty booked up?
During dry season especially. Things are slowing down a little bit now because wet season is upon us. But dry season, we were slammed. It more than paid for itself, and so that was huge because we needed a place for the family anyway to land, and so to be able to do that and have something that at least for half the year pays for itself completely was awesome.
Yeah. What is it more Panamanians or people from outside of the country?
It's a pretty good mix, actually. So we get we'll get backpackers through that are backpacking through Central America. We've got a lot of people coming from the States, Canada, Europe that are just destination traveling and want like a day or 2 or 3 on the beach. And so maybe they'll be coming from Bocas or Boquete or, San Blas or somewhere, and they'll land at our place for a few days before they move on to the next place. And then a lot of Panamanians coming from the city. Yeah.
So I'm doing some developments out in the Azuero Peninsula, and I'm curious, what have you found is like, what is the feedback that you've gotten from these travelers? Like why they pick a destination, why they come to your property, why they come back.
Yeah, travelers wise especially, a little bit different. Number one, a lot of them may not be strong in Spanish, and so they can see that we're, gringos essentially, living down here, able to speak Spanish or English, and that's a huge plus for them. And the price is right. We keep our prices fairly low to get a high turnover. And it's right there on the beach. We have a little town right near us. Our beach is fantastic. And then just like 10-minute walk down is this place, El Palmar, which is like surfing destination. So we got a lot of surfers come through, and a lot of people know about that. So they'll come through there. And it's a great stop-off point before you go to the city. If you're coming from the mountains, El Valle de Anton or Boquete, you've come by bus or maybe a rental car, and they're like, all right, this is a great midway spot. We'll stop, we'll hit the beach for a couple of days, relax, and then oftentimes they'll be coming to the city either to spend some days here or head straight to the airport.
This teaching job that you have, is this the first time you've been a teacher?
No, not the first time I was a teacher. I was a teacher early on in my career. I was doing like 3 different jobs at once, and one was part-time teaching in this little private school, tiny little school in California. And my whole career I've been working with teenagers, and so I took the skills from that, and frankly, I came through the back door into teaching when I came back to it during COVID. And I had just read voraciously as an adult, and especially in history. I just love history. I'm one of those guys, nerdy guys, loves history. And so I read tremendously. And then there was a job opening, and I didn't have teaching credentials. And it was, like I said, right in the middle of COVID. And these guys were looking for a history teacher, and it was a private school. And so I didn't need the certification, but I needed to know what I was doing. And I had vast experience with teenagers, and I knew what I was talking about. And so I basically kind of got in through the back door by having an interview with the principal. And he was like, yeah, I'm self-taught too. And this is fantastic. And I think you're going to do great. And then that job led to another job in Texas at the high school level. And then from there, I went back to doing some sailing captain work. And when we wanted to stay here in Panama, I had taught this couple some sailing lessons over the course of about a month, and turns out that they own a school here in town. And so when I was trying to find a way to stay in country here, my wife's like, why don't you call these guys up? They've got a school, you're a teacher. And I'm like, I never even considered these guys. And when we walked in for an interview for me, she said, yeah, we want you, and we want your wife to teach kindergarten too. So we're like, all right, I guess
Works out perfect.
We're all in, yeah.
What's the difference that you see in education here versus in the States? Or at a school like this versus in the States?
This school in particular is, it's got a great mix. It's based on a British system, but it's this mixture of quality academics and sort of a laid-back approach. So they don't have like school uniforms, and I guess the British way is kind of calling the teachers by the first name. Like, I'm like Mr. Ben, which was really strange for me coming from the States, because I was like, this is different. But I don't know, in a lot of ways, similar. I guess for this particular school, it's an international school. So that's what's been the most intriguing for me. Because the schools I've been at before, pretty similar demographic of the students. Here, radically different. We've got a bunch of Panamanian students, of course, but then we've got people that their parents are working at the UN or at the canal or doing any number of things. And so they're coming from Switzerland or Belgium or Argentina, all Latin American countries as well, Honduras and Venezuela and the States and Canada, but all over the place. And it makes for a really, really fascinating student body because it's more challenging as a teacher in some way because you can't just back up. Like I was trying to teach an English concept and we were talking about storytelling. And I was using the story of the fairy tale Cinderella as the basis of talking about rising action and climax and resolution and all this. And almost none of my students had any framework of like I had one kid. I'm like, wait a second, do you guys anybody here know Cinderella? One kid raised their hand.
No way.
I was like, oh, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. This is a different animal. I've got to remember my audience and them from each other too, because you look at a group of kids and a lot of them you'll just assume they're all speaking in Spanish to each other, and you're like, okay, it's a bunch of Panamanian kids. But it's not. They'll be from 6 or 7 different countries, but all interacting in the language. So it's pretty cool.
Are you interested in Latin American history at all?
I'm getting more and more interested. I'm interested in pretty much anything. And when I am in a location, I tend to dive deep into the history of the location. In fact, when we were on the boats, we were boat schooling, we call it, homeschooling on a boat. And so I had to design the entire curriculum for our kids and teach them as we sailed, which ended up being one of the most amazing experiences. Because now, once we got through the weird part of being teacher dad, it became really cool. Because now, wherever we went, whatever location we were, then I would use the history as a framework, but teach kind of a humanities approach. So we'd be talking about art and science and whatever from that era. So up and down the East Coast, we're talking about the age of exploration and colonialism. In the Bahamas, we're talking about the history of piracy, which with 4 preteen boys, they were all about it, But then even out here in the islands, we would talk about the history of Spanish colonization here and the pearl diving here in Las Perlas, the islands out here. And it was fantastic because now they're older high schoolers at this point, and we're able to do projects like, all right, here we're anchored in this bay. You're going to go out and you're going to create a nautical chart of this bay and this island using only technology that you'd have in the 1700s.
Wow.
And so it just was, that for me took it to a next level and has been a lot of fun.
To wrap up the pod or this episode, what is the most interesting fact that you have come across in Panama?
Fact in Panama.
Or history in fun
Panama.
fact that people might not know.
People might not know. This is a great question. Okay. I was intrigued by when we spent a year out in the islands out here in Las Perlas, the Pacific side here, and that the history of when the Spaniards got out there, this is the islands were a haven for pearl diving. And so the indigenous people unfortunately got pretty much wiped out by the Spaniards and the disease, but they used them at first to dive for more pearls. And pretty quickly wiped out that population for the most part. And that's when they started importing Africans in to do the pearl diving, which in the islands there, you can tell there's a lot of people of African descent. And I became friends with one of the guys out there. And we would sit and have coffee on my boat on his way to work from one island to the other. He'd pop by on his boat and we'd sit and talk. And he would tell me about his family history, which going back generations as natives in the island. Now, from my perspective, I'd be like, well, you guys aren't natives in the island, you're transplants. But his family's been there since I think 1500s. And
wow.
That was fascinating to me to hear about the galleon wrecks there, right there in the islands, Spanish galleons wrecked, and just the cultural shift that just visiting, I would have no concept. I would just say, they're just Panamanian people out here. but to be able to live there for some length of time and see the family history development, and them going from being farmers to fishermen, and then fishermen in sailboats to fishermen with power boats, that kind of development, that kind of thing, the very, very localized history really fires me up.
Very cool. I would sit here and just keep picking your brain about the history, but I think I can hear them at the door right now. But I appreciate you coming on. This was super fascinating, and you've lived obviously a pretty inspiring journey and crazy life. That's like, what I want to do in life, and I think a lot of people want to do those things, but are fearful to make that leap. So you're a testament that it can work.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun talking to you. I feel the same way. Let's just sit and chat for another hour.
Yeah, 100%.
Right on. Appreciate you having me.
Likewise.
I said, I've got to do something, and I started my preschool.
Okay, what was that like?
What was that like?
Yeah.
I took my time. I quit my job. It was at an international school, and I said, this is my time. I have to do something. And then I took half a year to figure out what it was. And I knew I loved teaching. I knew I loved the Reggio Emilia approach. Although I didn't think I would, I liked online teaching. I really could reach the kids and get the parents in as well. That's another part of the Reggio Emilia approach. You build a partnership with the parents, and you kind of teach them to teach their children, or to be with their kids in a meaningful way. And so fast forward, the pandemic happened, and I liked it, and then that was really bad. Can we cut that?
No, keep going. It's really good.
Anyway, so I just really, really enjoyed this path that I was on, and I said, I've got to do something for myself. And then I found a group of women in America who did this. They started preschools. And so I joined this, and they had like a step-by-step tutorial, so to speak, how to build your own company, how to set up your own website, how to, like people can pay you internationally and things like that.
Yeah.
How to do PR, and helped you set it all up. And so I joined this group. I'm still with them, and it's a community, right? And so a community of educators, and here I am 4 years in, and I only did preschool online at first. I'm in Russia, Africa, soon to be in Japan, in Germany, in the United States. I have children from Israel, from Thailand, you name it. And I'm learning so much myself because they teach me. And together with the parents, we have a community. I'm in their living room, they let me into their house, and it's wonderful.
You say you're introverted, but you're a very good speaker.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, that's really nice. And then while I was doing this online at first, for 2 to 3 years, somebody said, oh, would you come to my house here in Panama City? My child is sick. Could you not just do in-person classes? And I said, sure. So I went with my bag, and I now do this. I have children in the city that I drive to. It's all one-on-one. So I'm in between, sitting in front of the computer. I get in the car, and then I teach somewhere. I was here this morning. I came from a class just now. And so that's what I do. And the special thing is that each child, and that's part of the Reggio Emilia approach, each child is so different and individual, right?
Yeah.
And in the Reggio Emilia approach in the classroom, you follow the children. Yeah, you pick up on their behavior, on their interests, and you're just the guide, the observer. And then you create learning opportunities in the classroom for them, right? So that in the next day they come in and they think, oh my goodness, what is it going to be today? What buffet of activities do I have? And they connect to a concept or learning a skill. And so it's child-driven, play-based, and very individualized. And so I do this with the children online and the children in person. I teach only Monday through Thursday, and on Friday, I sit at home and I think, with love in my heart, about the children that I care for and the parents. And then I devise lesson plans, create them, make them fun. And then on Monday, I go and I teach them again.
Wow. Does that approach only work for preschool, or is that...
Up to elementary school.
So you explained it a little bit to me before, but what are the like fundamentals of that system? What does that look like in actuality? What is the methodology of that approach? What are the cornerstones of the Reggio Emilia system?
Well, it was born after the war, right? Loris Malaguzzi, who is the founder of this approach, got together with parents who needed schooling for their children, and he formed a community of learners, parents, teachers, and children. That's a cornerstone. The environment is the third teacher. Like, you fill your classroom with learning opportunities that are freely available. You do not say, oh, don't touch that. No. You want the children to walk around and explore things, and you want them to be really the protagonist of their learning. Yeah, so that's the environment is the third teacher. Then the teacher is just the guide. You don't teach letters the formal way. You embed letters and literacy into the learning opportunities. So it's very, holistic. It's like children are really interested in what they're doing, whatever is laid out, I picked up on. And so I create something that naturally they're interested in. One year in my classroom, it was superheroes. One year it was vibration, sounds. So the classroom was filled with learning opportunities that connected to that, So that's the Reggio Emilia approach, where you have project work. From a little seed of interest can come a really big project, and the whole community of learners connects to that, and you just make sure it keeps going. Each day you add a little something, and it's just wonderful. It's just, actually, it's like magic.
So for someone that may be like a student that might be a little more introverted, like yourself, how do you recognize the things that they're curious about if they're not as expressive about their internal emotions?
That's a really good question. First of all, as the guide on the side, you sit in the classroom with a pad of paper and a pencil, and you just sit there and just observe. And you can see so much when you just slow down yourself. You can see the interest of the children, what they stop at, how they touch it, if they smell it, and what they do with the object or the situation that you have in front of you. I was able to go to Italy twice, and that was really, really meaningful, because the city of Reggio Emilia exists. It's close to Bologna. And there you can see it in person. They have kindergartens and preschools, and you can see the magic in action there, like to the purest form. I'm just trying,
So are you, and I keep forgetting that these are literally preschool kids, so they're not like sitting in a classroom, they're like running around and like playing.
Oh yeah,
like,
and it's loud and it's noisy, and sometimes it's really quiet because they're just all engaged, and very, very, interested.
So are you just creating the environment? Wow.
And then I add things to the environment that make the learning interesting, keeps it going, and that also connects to skills and concepts. So they learn a lot about literacy, math, about science, and so that's really, it's a wonderful way. And I do this now online and in person. And online, the parents become my teacher helper. and they observe, because I'm not with the children. So at the end of the week, I get a report. This is what Johnny did, and this is how we carried last week's interest further. And then we create a lesson plan together.
Wow.
So it's a really warm feeling.
Yeah, this is really fascinating because, I mean, this podcast is really rooted in entrepreneurship and building businesses that are aligned with your purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And that has transitioned into DreamSpear, which is like, how do we catalyze this change in people to recognize that they have the ability to make an impact on the world and be financially prosperous through following their passions. Mm-hmm. But it's very interesting, this system, because to me, it sounds like applicable to a business, because as like a CEO or the leader of a company, you typically want to bring in good talent and then step out of the way and let them, prosper and drive the company through their own curiosity and their interests. But as that CEO, and it's just like you as the teacher, it's like we're trying to cultivate that environment and enact like little bits of energy that shift that culture within that environment. So it's very similar to, it sounds like, what you're doing with like such a young age.
Well, what I like to do is foster critical thinking, foster creativity, inquiry. Why is it this way? Not just accepting things, by asking. One technique is to ask open-ended question. I could say, do you like that? Yeah, I like that. I can also ask, what do you like about this? And then the children have to reply much more complex and give reasoning, right? So I think when children are very small and you give them tools to be creative thinkers, I think that will create a person that will be curious all throughout their life, and wonder why things happen the way they do, and who actually take their learning into their own hands, who are self-confident. At this age, when they're very little, I can make them feel loved, I can make them feel cared for, and I can make them feel challenged, right? And when I do that, if I do a good job, I think they will grow up feeling self-confident and know that they are capable learners, And when you do that, I think that's a really good deed.
Yeah, and I think that and I was talking to Rick about this, how there's not a manual for parenting, right? But I've never been a parent, so I'm kind of a little bit talking out of my ass here. But you see a lot of parents that kind of dictate what their children do, and I think that takes the power of decision making away from that child, and it removes that responsibility from them to make decisions on their own. And because of that, they become incapable of that critical thinking and making those decisions. So it's very interesting how you guys are cultivating that environment for them to make those decisions. Before you started the preschool, what was your intellectual interests? Was it teaching and education and psychology, or was this something new?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom, and worked in business before, but when the children, like I said, there was another baby, and then I started teaching a little bit at a language school, and that turned into a full-time job when we moved here to Panama. And I got my Montessori certification, so I'm a Montessori teacher.
What is that? I always hear about the Montessori schools and hear.
It's a very another holistic way of teaching. It's not frontal teaching. It's where the child learns by doing, and they're different. The child is an independent learner, and the environment there as well is the third teacher. But it's a little bit more structured. They have, for instance, you teach the child how to sweep or how to make a bouquet of flowers, and set that up. And it's very similar to the regional media approach, yet different.
A lot of people that we talk to on the podcast, or a portion of them, have gone from a corporate lifestyle to being an entrepreneur. But what is it like going from being a mother as your sole responsibility to now running your business? It's kind of like your child, I'm sure.
It's like my little fifth baby, but because we have 4 children. But I think it just grew over time. It just grew, the interest into teaching grew over time, and then I realized I really was passionate about it. And Rick's always been an educator, and so I was always his sidekick. And all of a sudden I am driving my own car. Like I'm in the driver's seat of my own business, and that feels really good.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be able to do that. I never thought so. It just...
Why did you think you wouldn't be able to do it?
Because it seems like such a big deal. And, because it was broken down into little steps for me by the framework, it happened.
What was that system and that framework that you were given to be successful?
It's called the All Stars by Joy Anderson. And so I joined the group of women and men who create their own preschools. And so then it happened.
Wow. And what were her steps that she takes to?
Well, she just has a plan how to, like in the States, you have to set up your LLC or, the whole technical part of it.
Yep.
Or my biggest thing was to go on Facebook and put it out into the world that I was doing this, because I've never been on Facebook before or Instagram. That's just not my thing. I'm very private. And then that was the thing we needed to do. That was the hardest step for me. And I pushed that button and the whole world knew, but that I was doing this, and I was mortified. And then the reaction was so wonderful.
So what was it, you said obviously before the podcast that you're very introverted. What was it like having to sell yourself to these clients that were going to be utilizing your preschool and putting yourself out there? Because that's a big challenge that half the population deals with, and is why they may be fearful to pursue the entrepreneurial journey, is because they don't want to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
So
it was a little bit, when I did the step of pushing the button, it was like jumping over a wall, right? And once I was on the other side, it was okay. Because I fully believed that I had done so much work for it, and I loved what I do. I love what I do, that I was just going to go for it. And then just step by step, students came, and it grew. And I thought, I'm going to be okay,
It's funny how when you make the commitment to that decision that you're going to get over that adversity, whatever happens, and you're going to always, you've made that commitment to being successful, how the universe kind of rewards you.
Mm-hmm. And our 4 girls, we have 4 girls, they were so supportive. And then Rick, of course, he's the best. He was cheering me on from the side. And it was my sisters and everybody was like, you go, girl. And so I did.
Where would you like to see the school go? What is your growth goals for the school? Or are you content with where you are right now?
I am content where I am. Maybe if it keeps growing, adding a teacher, but I like it to grow organically. I don't want to force things. I want it to be just right. I want the quality to stay the same. I want to be able to care, because that's what I like to do, to give good work. At the end of the week, for the in-person students, I take photos all the time. That's part of the regional media documentation. And then I write what I see, because that's important. And then I can tell the parents, see, this is what Johnny did, and this is why he did it, and why we did it, and how that was special. And so they're learning about skills and concepts through me, So I want to be able to continue to do that, because that's valuable for them. And it helps me to reflect on, he did this, why, okay. Next week we're going to do that.
What is the outcome that you wish to derive from this business and from this school? Like that you would say, if this is the outcome that I get from my students, then this was a success.
Just that they are self-confident learners, that they know their worth, that they feel excited about learning. That's what I want. I want my students to be excited about learning and to be self-confident in their own thoughts, their learning, that they grasp concepts and that they feel good about themselves.
And it's kind of sad that like the way school is set up right now, for me, I didn't like school, when I was in high school. And it's like, how sad is it that you don't like something where your sole objective is to learn? Mm-hmm. And that's a flaw in the system, at least in the public school system where I was from, that they are doing something and they're cultivating that environment improperly, that the students are rejecting a system where, again, the sole responsibility is to learn. So it's like, and we were talking about that too, it's like, it's messed up that, for instance, there are students that may not perform well in 7 classes, but they perform well in 1 class and they have an interest in that class. But because they're not doing well in those other 7 classes, they're not encouraged, or they're not promoted, or that curiosity is not encouraged in that one subject. And therefore, they are led to believe that they're a failure because they're not performing well in these other, 6 or 7 classes. I don't know if I'm making sense when I'm saying this, but it just seems like a broken system to me where someone like that is led to believe that they are not a functioning member of society, or because they're told that they're a failure in these other classes, instead of promoting that curiosity like you guys are doing. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, too.
So it's just like, I think that although this system is used for, limited at, a certain age, it seems applicable to me through school, but also into business. Yeah. What is the biggest thing that you have learned through this journey building this business?
Anything. I can. If I put my mind to it and good energy, I can do anything.
And you were a little bit nervous to do this podcast today?
Yeah.
And you did it?
It did it. Yeah.
Well, that was my final question, and that's really good advice for people. So you made it through.
I made it through, and it didn't hurt.
Wasn't too bad, right?
No, you were very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you for coming on. So you're from Nebraska originally?
I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and I moved to Panama 11 years ago.
Really? How'd you get here?
So I met my husband when he was playing baseball in the US, and he's from here, and Panamanians don't like to leave, so we eventually ended up getting married. And then 3 years later, he retired, and we came back to Panama, and we haven't left.
You like Panama?
I do now. It took a while, but I've learned to appreciate, there's good and bad in every place, and so it just took some getting used to some things, but I do really appreciate it.
What didn't you like about it in the beginning?
It's just like some things that you're so used to being easy in the States, like you can just do everything on an app or online. Like here you have to go to some office and like stand in line to get a paper signed by somebody and then take it over to another office. And it's just like those things that take a little bit longer, but it's very safe. I feel very safe here. I have 2 daughters. I feel safe having children here. And people are very friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you work for the school now?
Yes.
Okay, what are you doing?
I'm doing 7th grade English. So this is before I was with Rick at Costco, and I did English and media studies for years 7 through 11. And then I had the opportunity to actually go to the school that my daughters are at. And I talked to Rick, and he was so supportive of it and was like, there's nothing like being at the same place with your kids. And that's true. So it has been a challenge going for like only 7th grade, instead of mixing it up between like older kids and younger kids, but it's been fun.
Is teaching your background? Is that what you studied?
No, so I got my major in broadcast journalism, and then I worked a little bit for a station in Omaha, and after that I won Miss Nebraska, and so I had to take that year and go prepare for Miss USA. And something I did that was really fun was I would visit a lot of schools and like read to children, and I always thought that was fun. I enjoyed it. And then I also at the same time was coaching a high school varsity cheer team. And I just like the vibe of being up at school, like the energy, like I feel like it keeps you young, you know, all the words that the kids are saying and everything. So it was fun, but I never really thought about it. Like I didn't think I was a teacher. I had a lot of friends that were teachers. And so actually what happened was we moved here and I had my 2 daughters and I was at home with them. And once they got into school, I was like, okay, well, I need to do something. So one of my friends that worked at a school said, why don't you just come sub? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, they call you and you say yes and no. And somebody was out for a maternity thing. So I was there for a while and I really liked it. Like, I just liked, again, like the energy of like being with the kids, and it's just fun. And I actually got the job at Costco when I was interviewing to just sub there to add more schools so I would have different, options. And I talked to Rick, and Rick was like, we had the best conversation. We just talked for like hours, and he was like, okay, so this is crazy timing, but we just had somebody leave like literally yesterday. Would you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, and so it was kind of just getting like thrown into the deep end and like swim, but it was great. I felt like I just like had so much support, and that's sometimes the best way to learn is to just like get it into it, so that's kind of like my journey into teaching.
How has being a teacher transformed you as a person?
Oh, I mean, it's just, so many more kids that you feel like you love. Like, I feel like I have 50 children, and just the interest and wanting to see them grow and being there for them. And like, it's just been amazing. Like the connections first relationally is my favorite thing. And then like when you see them like get something, and a lot of the students are second language English. So being able to help them like learn to like English, and like want to learn it and speak it is like really cool.
How do you catalyze and inspire them to learn something like English?
I think the relationship. I think finding out like what they like to do. And then once you can connect with them and figure out what would motivate them. If you have a kid that loves sports, like have conversations with them in English. So you make them practice, but like about sports, like how's soccer going? How's golf going? Blah, blah, blah. And then like it just becomes more and more natural over time.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you see is the difference between how you learned growing up versus like the systems that you're using to teach now?
Well, in my day, we didn't have, like smart boards and all that stuff. So it was, that's different. I think it's good. I think it's good and bad. Like there's different challenges then of like, you didn't have to try and figure out if the kids are using AI and those things. And I feel like it does affect sometimes the attention span, but it's also a huge tool. Like you can find so many resources and people share ideas. And so I think that's the biggest difference from when I was in school. And like, obviously like the benefit that the children have here is that they are learning multiple languages truly like enmeshed in their whole school. Like in Omaha, I loved my school, but it would be, you took a second language for 50 minutes a day, and so it didn't really become part of something that you had inside of you. It was just like a class that you go take. And so I think it's much better just the immersion into both here.
How old are your daughters now?
They're 10 and 7.
Okay, sweet. Because I was going to ask like about if you guys were thinking about college or anything yet, and
No.
what your take is on that.
No, I'm not thinking about college yet. Who knows what college will even look like at that time, I think.
What do you think about it now?
I think the college has to fit you. So you have to know what you like. But like I changed my major 3 times. So I think going to a place that you can have the flexibility to kind of take different classes and then get a feel of what you like. I know the worst thing for me was the first 2 years of undergrad, because it was just like, you take the standard classes that everybody has to take, and it was so boring. But then once I found out what I was into, I loved going to class. And so I think that's the key of like, you just have to find a way to get the kids interested so that they want to come to class and they want to learn.
Yeah, it's like a repetitive theme that we've had with these past couple podcasts is like finding out what the student wants to learn instead of like projecting on them what you think they should learn.
Yeah, and like I heard you guys say earlier, it's also about like figuring out what makes the kid feel proud of themselves. Like not everyone has the same type of intelligence, and that's great. That's what makes the world awesome. But then like once you can identify what it is for them, even if they don't see it, like praising them and like, hey, great job, I saw you did this. And like, then they become really proud of it and then they want to keep doing more.
One of my mentors asked me like, probably like a year ago, he had asked this question. I didn't know why he was asking it, but he said, if you were to walk into Barnes and Noble and you go into the magazine section, what magazines would you pick out?
Okay.
And I thought that was an interesting way. What he was trying to figure out was like, what are my passions? What are my intellectual interests? Because leading with that when you're teaching entrepreneurship or teaching someone, how to start a business, in my opinion, I think that it's better to lead with that passion because and it's really anything in life. Like if you want to be good at something and you want to have success with something, it takes so much hard work and dedication where if you're not passionate about that thing and you don't have an intellectual interest in it, it's very difficult to put in the amount of energy that's required to perform well. So if you start first with that interest and those passions and what you would be doing, even if there wasn't like some financial reward or external gratification, it makes it a lot easier to get through those.
Yeah, it's like the whole find your why.
Exactly.
And I think also it's like being self-aware, like not one person is great at everything. So like figure out what you're naturally good at and then like lean into that and don't beat yourself up if you like look at somebody else doing something. Like that was a big thing for me because I would see other people that have been doing this way longer than me. And like, oh, I don't do that well, but I do other things well. And so like you just lean into that and you try and supplement as much as you can, but like leaning into your unique gifting.
How did you start doing how did you become Miss Nebraska?
Okay.
Let's backpedal here a little bit.
No, it's okay. So I played soccer growing up my entire life. And I had some offers to go to a few different colleges and I don't know, like I went on some visits and I was like, this is just not for me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to stay in Nebraska and try and figure it out for a year. And over the summer, I had a babysitting job for the sweet little boy that I watched every summer. And do you remember the TV show Made on MTV?
Made?
You might be too young for this. So the basis of the show is that you would have somebody be like, I want to, like a regular guy, like I want to be a race car driver.
Oh,
so
yeah,
then they'd
yeah.
bring in a race car driver and like train him for like 6 weeks or whatever. And then like go to your first
I remember
race.
this for sure. There was like a girl that wanted to be a skateboarder.
Yeah. So
I remember the show.
It was just like we were hanging out. I was babysitting him during the summer. And there was an episode where this girl was like, I want to be made into a beauty queen. And I'm watching it and I was like, I could do that. So I just went home and I looked online and I found that there was a local pageant a couple weeks later. And I borrowed a friend's prom dress and my mom was like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's fine. So there were over 100 girls, like there were 120 girls and I made the top 5 my first pageant. So I was fun and I'm competitive. So it was just something new. I kind of just got really into it and that led me down. And 2 years later, I won Miss Nebraska USA and it was such a cool experience to have.
So you've always kind of had this level of confidence to try new things and confidence in yourself.
I don't think it's I think it's just I'm not afraid to try new things. So not that I even am confident that I'm going to be great at it, but like my whole thing is like, it doesn't hurt to try.
Did you have parents that were like very like encouraging?
They were very encouraging, but my mom is very like the opposite. So she's more conservative. Like she'll want, if she's going to try something new, like she'll want to perfect it on her own first before she would try it. So that's why it freaked her out when I was like, I'm going to go do a pageant. She's like, no, but my dad is a little bit more like my personality. And so, yeah, it's just, I think, it never hurts to just go out and try it.
So what does that look like? Like, what is the process of becoming Miss Nebraska?
Oh, I mean, everyone has their own different process. Like the journey does not look the same for everybody. Some girls will start out and they compete in teen, and there's sometimes like former Miss Teen Nebraskas that'll come back and compete. But basically, you're judged on swimsuit, interview, and evening gown. And it's equally divided over those three. And you go for a weekend and you get a 3-minute interview with the judges and leave it up to fate.
But you were saying you were going to a lot of schools. Is there like a political aspect to it?
No, so after you win, like you just visit,
Oh,
like you just
okay.
make appearances and
I didn't know if there was like votes you had to garner or something.
no, so I didn't go to schools before I went afterwards. So like, you know, they'll call and say, would you like to come read a Dr. Seuss book to our 3rd grade class, you know? And so you just go, you make an appearance, like take pictures with the kids and that kind of stuff.
What do you take from that experience of going through that process into your life now?
Oh, that's a good question. So many things. I just think you can never become the best version of what you want to be until you figure out your best version of you and actually like getting to know who you are. Because the thing about pageants is like, you're just selling like yourself. And you're like, this is what I have to offer. And again, it's like what somebody else is good at might not be the thing that I'm the best at, but like I know me and I can only speak for me. And then once you get to that level of like knowing yourself, you can really present your authentic self to everyone else. And I think that is really key in all aspects of life.
So that's like very difficult for a lot of people, is to find that authentic self. Like, do you have a methodology for someone that is like trying to figure out their, like you said, your why, or finding their purpose, or like trying to understand themselves better?
I mean, I think, you know, just be honest with yourself. Don't be overly critical on everything and give yourself grace, but also like you got to look in the mirror. And if you have a repeating pattern of like something's not working, or you get into like arguments with different people, like you got to look in the mirror and like, is it something I'm doing? And a lot of people don't want to ask that question. It's easier to like point the finger. So when you can really like self-assess, I think that helps you have more genuine relationships with other people.
So was this in college that you were doing all this, or before? Yeah. Okay, and then you studied journalism, you said?
Yeah.
What did you do after college?
So actually, I won right after I graduated. So I was working for the news station while I was like my senior year. And then I won Miss Nebraska, and then I took some time off because my husband was still playing and just traveling with him. And then we moved here. So it's only been since the last couple years that I've really been working like full time, but just always with the girls, and I coach also. So like that's what I was doing in the meantime of like, I coach other girls that are preparing for pageants. So like we work mostly with interview, but it's in all aspects.
What does interview look like? What is that? What are the fundamentals and the skill set that you need to be good at that?
I think you just need to be able to present yourself and not be afraid to admit if you don't know the answer. Because I think we've all seen, you know, when people have their YouTube moment and then they answer and you can tell they're not sure where it's going, but they don't want to stop saying. So I think it's a lot better to just be like, I don't know. I'm going to look into it. And then you move to the next one. And so I think it's just being genuine and like having like a personality that people want to go hang out with you afterwards, you know? So
how do you cultivate that personality? How do you teach someone that maybe have the other components of that could be a pageant winner, but they don't have that charisma or personality skills? And you said you were coaching a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think there is some of it that's just God-given, you know? But I do think it's going back to like, look at yourself. How can you present your most authentic version? And, you know, usually they ask like, why do you want to do this? Or why would you be a good Miss Nebraska or whatever? And like, give them your true answer. Like that's only unique to you that no one else could say.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that like when you authentically communicate, it translates a lot more energy. Mm-hmm. But what happens a lot of times is people have gone so long being inauthentic that they're surrounded by this incongruent environment. And so when they start communicating authentically, they get a negative response, where once they start communicating authentically, they have to basically like rework their environment. But it's interesting, once you start being that authentic person, you're going to re-attract in a new environment, and then you find a lot more alignment and congruence within your life. But
yeah, and you can empower other people to do it too. You know, like not everyone is going to like you, and that's fine. You know, not everyone has to be best friends, but as long as you feel true to yourself and you're happy with it and you know you're doing your best, then that's fine.
So after you did the journalism, then you moved to Panama immediately after that?
No, so after I graduated,
Sorry, I'm trying to get the timeline.
So I graduated in December. I won Miss Nebraska in November and then graduated in December. And so then what happens after you win is you sign a contract. It's a job for a year. And so I worked that year. Yeah. Yeah, it's a full-time job. Like you go 2 weeks to Miss USA, you do events, you do appearances, like it's a full job. So I did that the year after. And then after my year was over and I crowned the new girl, that's when I went with my husband when he was still playing, and because he would get like traded and moved up and down. So we just traveled for a while and then moved here.
What's that like, supporting an athlete that's like moving around so much?
I was used to it. I grew up, my dad coached for the Royals. And so we grew up with like him being gone for the season. Sometimes we would travel, but then it was a little bit harder when we started school. So I had a different background that for me, it was just normal. But I think it is one of those jobs that it's such a short time of your life because like physically you can only do it for so long that it does help to have somebody just being there and like being supportive, and then life just organically like changes after that, you know, but it's such a short time.
I've spoken to a good amount of like professional athletes and coaches, and what I've learned is that once you get to that level, like everyone is extremely physically talented, but what differentiates like the superstars a lot of times is that mindset. Is that something that you've noticed?
100%. In fact, there was somebody that he played with that was talent-wise one of the best like ever on multiple teams, but he just could not get over the mental aspect of it. And the career he had was not the career that it was projected for him to have. And so I think there's a certain amount, like everyone at that level is competitive and everyone at that level knows what they need to like critique. And I think the ones that are just like the superstars are the ones that can leave if it's a bad day, leave it in that day and just move on and know you're going to succeed. Like in their mind, there is no doubt, like I am succeeding. And I think the more you say it to yourself, like that truly becomes reality.
It's like, I mean, I don't think it's just applicable to athletics. It's applicable in all things. But it's interesting that you say like, say it to yourself, those like positive affirmations. It shows that like there is a methodology and it's a discipline. It's not just like, I guess it can be God-given in some situations, but there is a way to learn how to have that confidence and to create that mindset. And we talk about it all the time with entrepreneurship. It's again, like entrepreneurship is like the professional athletes of business, you know, and we were talking with Rick about how we encounter people all the time that are Harvard MBAs or Ivy League school, have all these business credentials. So on paper, talent-wise, they should be performing a lot better than a lot of these entrepreneurs, but it's the people with the toughest minds that really, you know, do the best.
Yeah, and I just think the key is like you cannot be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, like that cuts you off like immediately. Like if you fail, like that's a possibility, it can happen, but like my philosophy is like you just got to go all in. All in, and whatever happens, happens. But like, if you are afraid to like take a shot because it might not go in, then you're absolutely not making the shot, you know? So I just think like, if you're going all in, like go all in anything.
But how do you get away from that fear? Like a lot of times it's, you know, it's a product of the environment that it's like a survival response that they have that fear. And it's like, how do you overcome that fear to be able to break the boundaries and the limitations and the internal belief systems that are not suppressing, limiting that success?
Yeah, I mean, therapy for some people can be helpful, like truly. Some people can just like read a book and something will click. Finding people that are where you want to be and like really getting good advice from them. Maybe they can see what you're doing, but I think in the end, it's just doing it.
Yeah.
Like you can talk, read a million books, whatever, but like just in the end, like just do it, you know?
What's your definition of success?
I think when you are truly like at peace and you find things and people that fulfill you.
What habits do you instill in your daily life to make yourself at peace?
Well, faith is a big part of my life. Family is a big part of my life. Finding things that, like reading sometimes, like finding moments in like the quiet where I can just feel also like not just mom, not just a teacher, but like that I can find myself, like things that I like, going for a walk. I just think it doesn't take a lot and it doesn't have to be a big thing, but just something that will let you breathe for a second and recenter it can be crucial, especially in the world that's so fast.
What kind of books do you like to read?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think. The one I'm reading right now is called, hold on, I just gave it to a friend too. Changes the Heal. And it's so good. And it's about like finding those things in our life that like maybe we grew up thinking these things that our families created or our friends created or that something happened to us and we just put these limitations on our mind or these blocks in our mind. And like, how do you make the change to like heal from those? And then coming back to like how you can be authentic.
How do you make the change?
Well, you got to read the book. There's a lot of different examples.
It's called Changes That Heal?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I will definitely have to is it for men too?
Yeah, it's for anybody.
I didn't know if it was like a female book or something.
No, it's for anybody.
So, last question. What is the biggest thing that you have learned through your life that you are doing now that you weren't necessarily doing before that you think is imperative to success or through having a successful life by your definition?
I can 100% answer this because it happened when we first moved down and it was a really rough transition for me. But the thing that I learned is just don't quit complaining. Even if things suck right now, like the more you complain and talk about it and then you start to wallow and all that, like that does zero good. So like even if you're not in your favorite place that you want to be, literally, physically, whatever, don't complain about it. Find things that you can like be grateful for because that will overcome the negativity.
Great advice.
Thank you.
You seem very authentic and you have a lot of confidence. It's clear. You can feel it in the energy when you communicate, and it's inspiring. For people or a person that's watching this that may want to connect with you or ask you for advice, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
It's a new one now because I actually got hacked last April.
Oh, man.
So,
but it's Haley.Herold.Espino. So,
Sweet.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. It was awesome.